Hello again. Before we begin, I would like to thank you all who watched the previous video as it exploded in views. This is more views than I ever got, so thank you. In the previous devlog, I've updated the terrain system and added the territories to the game. While in this one, I will make the building aspect of my city builder better, as currently the buildings just pop in fully built. And also, as you can see, I am trying something new. A lot of other game dev channels show their face on YouTube, but I don't really want to do that, and I also don't even own a camera, so I've decided to model this dragon that I will use instead. And I've also changed my channel name and icon, as Infoware Games was a bit too generic of a name, and honestly I didn't even like it. Now let's begin with the actual devlog. And the first thing I did was raise the sea level. This was actually suggested to me in the comments by Tony Verest. I am sorry if I butchered that name. This did actually improve the look of terrain, so thank you for the suggestion. Then I added the clothes to the NPC model. Now that those two things are done, let's get into the main part of the devlog. First things first, I've decided to put the buildings from the second devlog into their own categories in the building menu. This did also include a rewrite of a lot of the game's code, from the building placement scripts to the NPC behavior script. While we are at the NPC behavior script, this script was rewritten the most. It's still not a full rewrite, but it's a bit better than where it was before. The rewrite is still a thing I plan to do in the future, but it will happen off camera. Currently you can just place buildings inside of trees on top of each other in neutral territories, which does need to be changed. And I did just that. You can no longer do the aforementioned stuff. I've also added a building ghost, which is just the building's model, which is either red or normal color, and that tells you if the building can be placed or not. My game currently lacks stuff that is staple of the city building genre. Like for example, currently the player cannot really cancel the placement of the building if they choose to not build it. That's precisely what I've added next. After you select a building to build, you can now cancel the placement with the right mouse button. Then I went on a side quest and redid the building selection codebase and UI, because previously it wasn't expandable in any way. The biggest change with the new UI is that it's scrollable, which will later allow me to add new UI elements more easily to it. Now let's get back to the main quest, since there is still one big problem in the game. Once you place a building, you cannot really demolish it in any way. And to implement that mechanic, I've first added a demolish button to the building menu in the infrastructure tab. Currently the button does absolutely nothing. That's why I've added a demolishing mode to the game that activates when you press that button. In this mode you can destroy any structure you may have, and you can easily exit it by pressing the escape key. Currently, the game doesn't feature a beginning, and you have to spawn the NPCs in with a keyboard, so I've decided to change that by adding a camp to the game, which is your beginning set of buildings. It would consist of a few NPCs, a few tents that act as homes for them, a temporary storage place, and maybe some other things in the future as the game evolves. Now let me quickly just make the layout of the camp. After I've added a camp to the game, I've realized that it's just a bit too big to fit anywhere. So this is the first and only building of the game that removes the trees when you place it. Actually, the camp is not a single building, but more so a collection of different buildings, as every one of these buildings inside the camp is its own object. But I've also realized something when I implemented the camp into the game. 16 free territories you get at the start of the game is not too big, and the camp takes a big portion of space. So you don't have any space left to build after placing the camp. Which is why I decided to raise it to 100 territories. That's maybe a bit too big, but it's subject to change in the future. It does its job fine, but it's a bit tedious taking all these territories. But as I said, it may change in the future. If you have any ideas, you can put them in the comments below. And while we are at it, why not also subscribe to the channel and like the video if you haven't done that already. And only now did I make the NPCs spawn inside of the camp, so I can finally remove the debug keybind for spawning NPCs. But we have a slight problem. As you can see, I can build multiples of the camp. That's why I've made it only possible to build a camp and take territories when starting the game. And after you place the camp, we go back to the normal UI. There's something a lot of city building games have that my game, as well as some others that I won't name, are missing, and that is animations for buildings being built. And that is exactly what I'm going to add next. But before I could do that, I needed to make models for building phases, so here they are. You may have also noticed that the long village house doesn't appear here. That is because they've decided to cut it out of the game. And you may have also noticed that all of these buildings, except the port, have been updated. And then I've added them to the game, replacing the old models. Remember when I said that a NPC rewrite will come to the game? Well, I did it after replacing the building models. Previously, the NPC script was what is called a God script, which means that it did everything. While now each element of the NPC, from movement to taking resources out of storage, are their own scripts. This allows me to expand the NPC's AI without it breaking everything else about the NPC. There are also some smaller changes with this rewrite, so I'll quickly go over most of them. All resources are now programmed to appear in hand, when before the logs were left on the ground and they were picked up later. NPCs now correctly rotate when they work or buy things at the stall. If the NPC has a home, they will go there when tired, because now they can actually get tired. NPCs now have 10 different names and surnames that they can have, thanks to a little known website called Fantasy Name Generator. I am not really good with names. And last but not the least, NPCs now have a slight variation in their movement speeds, but it's actually so small that it's unnoticeable. There are still some quirks to sort out, but I'll do that off camera. Now onto the last part of this devlog, the building system. Currently the buildings just pop into place and I wanted to change that. Instead, the NPCs will collect required resources from storage and then deliver it to the construction site, where they will use the resources to build the building. I will only show you the process of implementing this for the granary building, because it's pretty much the same for other buildings. I've started by making a script that tracks the building's construction progress. And when it comes to certain percentages, the model changes to match how far along the construction process is. Once it reaches 100%, its model is replaced with the fully built building. After this, I've made the game spawn a construction site instead of a fully built building when the player goes to place the building down. Now I just needed to make the NPCs take the resources from the lumberyard to the construction site, and then build the building. How hard can that be? As it turns out, it's not that hard actually. And then I've added every other building's construction process to the game. That's where I'll be leaving this devlog. The building system is in a much better place now, and so is the game as a whole. I am aware that this devlog wasn't filled with much new content, but with the rewrite I can start adding new and bigger things to the game without it falling apart. So, thank you for watching and see you in the next devlog.